Hey, would it be? It's your boy Dre OG. Welcome back to the OG family. Make sure y'all smash that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you're rocking with the vibes and the content. But look, man, we got these crazy facts about history that they ain't teach your ass in school. But look, man, buckle up, man. Make sure y'all smash that like button. Just know if you're going through a tough time, we're going through this thing called life together. Good vibes only on this channel. You know what I'm saying? Someday we'll get to 1 million of good vibes. But look, let's kick it.
Before Jesus, it was Horus. Before Adam, it was Atum. Before Mary, you know, the so-called Caucasian woman, Virgin Mary, it was Isis. I have Isis and Horus. This is a real statue in Egypt, by the way. And now you have Mary and Jesus. Nothing more than a painting. Bro, I'm telling you, that Bible got y'all programmed. Everything in that Bible was stolen from ancient Kemet. Kemet is Egypt, if you didn't know. And this is just only a little bit. If you look at everything from Egypt and then you look at Christianity, they stole everything, bro. I'm telling you, that Bible was poison.
There are coins that will show you what Hannibal looked like, and on the back are the elephants that he brought into warfare with him.
The Europeans, they've always tried to Europeanize African figures like Hannibal. They've always tried to make Hannibal into a European. As a matter of fact, I saw something recently. They were trying to do the same thing with Mansa Musa. We all know that Mansa Musa was a West African king of Mali, who's the richest man ever recorded. And I saw something in a textbook recently that had him white. So with Hannibal, his military genius was something that they don't want to attribute to the African people, but he was an African man.
Hannibal was African.
Have you ever wondered how Africa came to be divided up and colonized by a bunch of European countries? If you've never heard of the Berlin Conference of 1884, you're about to get a window into the very definition of audacity. Leaders from 13 European countries, plus the US and Ottoman Empire, decided to hold a conference in Berlin in 1884 to decide what countries got to rule various regions of the African continent. Belgium's King Leopold decided that Africa was the next big territory that needed to be exploited for its natural resources and land. Germany's Chancellor Otto von Bismarck decided that rather than go to war over it, it would be much more civil to call a meeting with 15 countries to divide the continent up, like gentlemen, if you will. No African leaders were invited to participate. The scramble for Africa marked a 20-year period of pillaging, exploiting, dividing, and conquering nearly every part of the African continent to establish territories for material gain and power for 7 European nations. The audacity. By 1975, more than 40 African countries had finally gained their independence through war, diplomacy, and protest. But the effects of that decades-long siege had a devastating impact on the continent.
The richest man to ever walk the earth. Mali King Mansa Musa. Mansa is the Mali word for king. Musa translates to Moses, which gave this king the nickname Black Moses. Mansa Musa was born 1280 AD, and he reigned over Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, the Ivory Coast, and Morocco. Musa took over the mantle of king after his brother Abu Bakr II took 2,000 ships and over 10,000 people across the Atlantic.
Oh shit, hold on. Hey, that shit kind of look like me. Don't it? No? I'm Master Musa, y'all. I better stop playing with me now. I'm just playing. Kind of look like somebody in my family or something, though.
Across the Atlantic. Musa rose to fame when he took his legendary trip to Mecca. On his trip, he led a caravan of over 60,000 men, 12,000 slaves, and 80 camels packed with 300 pounds of gold apiece. He was world renowned for his generosity, and it was said that he gave away so much gold during a 3-month stay in Cairo that he sent Egypt into an economic slump for 12 years.
What's missing from
it might be me.
Native Americans? The answer?
You know that in World War II there were Native Americans who used their native languages to transmit messages for the United States? They called these guys code talkers. During World War II, the Japanese were experts at tapping into US communications, decoding messages, and then organizing ambushes against the United States. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States Marines recruited around 500 Native Americans from 25 different tribes to code and transmit top-secret communications in their native languages. The languages that were used were from the didn language family. These languages were perfect for coding messages because of their complex language structure and because there weren't any published materials for the Japanese to get their hands on. Navajos made up majority of the code talkers, so here are some examples of the code they created in their language. To communicate the letter C, they would say mose, which translates into cat. The receiver would then write down the first letter of the translated word. What had previously taken rotor machines hours now took code talkers minutes. This gave Allied forces a great advantage and ultimately helped win the war.
People often don't seem to realize just how bad of a person Christopher Columbus was. Like, yeah, he has a national holiday, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a huge asshole. In the late 1400s, Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. You've probably already learned that in school, but what you might not have learned were the things he did once he got there. When Christopher first arrived in the
Hold on, let me just I couldn't take that. You can't discover something that wasn't lost in the first place, and there was already people that inhabited this place, and they were brown people, they were chocolate people, but it's whatever.
Americas, he immediately grabbed 6 of the natives and basically told them they had to be his servants. The native Indians had no idea how to react to this, but since they were very peaceful people, they just went along with whatever he said. That eventually led to Columbus becoming the self-appointed governor of the island, and that's when things just started getting really bad. Christopher immediately began forcing the natives to work for him, shipping thousands of them back to Spain as literal slaves. And when the Indians finally began resisting his awful rule, he slaughtered thousands of them, parading their bodies through the streets. Eventually, every single Indian was either dying from disease, starving, or dying from their work, and Christopher Columbus, he didn't care. Following Columbus's arrival, the Native American population went from 250k to just a few hundred. Columbus literally caused genocide.
If you visit Black Hills in South Dakota,
y'all want to know what that's kind of a play off of? Did y'all see the movie with the Wakanda movie, the Black Panther movie? Did y'all see that? Like, did you understand that, like, when these people came, they gave the native people these diseases in order to survive? They drank that elixir to make them be able to breathe water and shit like that. So that's basically what they was talking about.
Probably come across Mount Rushmore, the famous monument built on stolen indigenous land. But 17 miles away, there's a bigger monument commissioned by a Lakota chief. This is the Crazy Horse Memorial. Crazy Horse was a 19th century Lakota war leader notable for his battles against U.S. settlers and their encroachments on Lakota territory. In 1939, Henry Standing Bear, a Lakota chief, wrote to sculptor Korczak Julkowski, who helped carve Mount Rushmore, and commissioned him to build the Crazy Horse Memorial, saying, "My fellow chiefs and I would like the white man to know that the red man has great heroes too." Korczak moved to Black Hills and started work on the monument in 1948. After his death in 1982, construction continued and is still going on to this day, thanks to his family and with private funding through the Crazy Horse Memorial Foundation. While there is some opposition to the memorial from members of the Lakota tribe, the Crazy Horse Memorial is open to paying visitors. Once completed, it will be the second largest sculpture in the world, all in an effort to honor indigenous history, heroes, and heritage. So that's kind of interesting.
I bet you didn't know about this form of punishment in ancient Egypt. This was the punishment for most crimes, and they made criminals very identifiable. What they would do was take the criminal and cut their nose off. Then they were sent to a whole city that was a prison. It was called Rhinocolura. It was completely populated with criminals. The city was surrounded by 66-foot walls and had guards constantly watching. Though if someone escaped, they were easily identifiable with their disfigured face. According to ancient historians, there was very little water available and the criminals were left to govern themselves.
Can you speak on the tension between Puerto Ricans and...
Look, man, let's go back. The reason why those statues and stuff, like, that might be a little minor story to the side, but the big, if you look at the bigger picture, look at all the statues from back in our ancient times, the noses were knocked off of the statues because of jealousy in who was ruling the areas at those certain time frames, and they just wanted to mutilate and destroy every existence of that ever being a thing. And a big part of the determining factor of like who we are, you can tell who we are by our noses, but that's what they did. But it's all good. We know. We're gonna move forward though.
Military served in the Guatemalan army. After his service, he settled down in a village of 400 people near his hometown, where he worked as a farmer. He eventually had his own children and even grandchildren. Throughout the years, they noticed strange symptoms that they were all experiencing, like intense pain when trying to urinate, horrible aches in their joints, the inability to have children, and aches. Until a friend that was studying at university told them that this looked like textbook gonorrhea, but they had no idea how they would have gotten it. He later learned that in the 1940s, Guatemalan military members, mental patients, orphaned children had all been exposed to gonorrhea, syphilis, and cancroid. He only learned this because he was watching the news, and the then Secretary of State, Clinton, was issuing a public apology because this was a U.S. researcher-led experiment. Federico and his family live in an area so remote, it's very difficult for them to receive medical care. And it's horrible that he only learned about this because he was watching the news and he happened to be on that very channel where Clinton was issuing that apology. More than 5,000 uninformed and unconsenting Guatemalan people were part of this experiment. And other than the public apology that came years later, nothing else has been done.
So I woke up this morning and I saw this tweet.
Check this out. Break it down like this. I take it like this. So when you think about this, these people have a certain mindset of like a serial killer. See, a serial killer will look out for the weakest target, right? They will seek out the weakest target for, the best opportunity to get the job done. Feel like somebody that's under the radar, nobody cares about, the least cared about, in which this was created in a system that made these people that particular group. Now you're that target. Now they're preying on you over and over for the experiments, for all the new stuff that they're going to be trying to implement. They'll test on a certain group of people that they know have really good genetics and can take this type of stuff in order to like control markets, and y'all know what to do. I ain't going to get too deep into that, but it's crazy out here. Hopefully y'all tracking.
And I thought, yeah, this is actually true. The drink was popular in Nigeria, Mali, and all throughout North Africa, and it was known as kunuaya. It was introduced to Mexico because of Spanish and Portuguese traders. But it's not just horchata that's quintessentially African in Latin America. Tamarind, that's used in tamarindo, in popular drinks throughout South America and the Caribbean, comes from the tamarind plant that's native to West Africa. Jamaica, that's used in agua de Jamaica, is also from a plant that's native to West Africa. Dominican mango, Puerto Rican mofongo are all derivatives of the word mangusi, which is a Congolese word which means to mash, which is exactly what's being done in the preparation of this food. The concept of sancocho, taking meats from several different animals and stewing them and adding a thickener along with vegetables, was first discovered on islands off the coast of West Africa. This dish is now one of the most popular dishes in Colombia, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. The idea of using plantains as a starch to make food like pasteles goes back to the African tradition of using them for the same thing, along with cassava and yuca. People would like to have us think that we're so far removed from our African roots, but we're really not.
Unfortunately, Latinos in this country are often seen through the prism of immigration, as if we were all immigrants. But let's not forget about the Alamo. Are we going to forget about the Alamo? How did Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California become part of this country? I think that's important to remember that we've had not just generations, but centuries of presence here. That we are, in fact, American. We along with our Native American brothers and sisters, are part of this land, and I think that has to be brought up. The immigrant analogy, a beautiful analogy, because it's one that sparks hope, and it talks about inclusion and assimilation. Very important. However, let's not forget that the ugly face of race that has developed over the years, and it's developed because of the nation building process of this country. We did have Indian wars. We did have slavery. There was a war with Mexico. There was a war with Spain. Those wars, all those incidents have, in fact, repercussions. People develop, differences based on those kind of physical and critical events.
Hi, how are you? Hey, hi, hello, it's me.
But you know what's crazy though? When you want to speak about the stuff that you go through, it's still people, you see on Twitter. I forgot his name. I don't even want to give him no clout, but tweeted something insensitive about my people, basically saying that we ain't been through shit and nobody gives a fuck, right? We understand that y'all feel that way, but we're going to keep rocking out and doing what we're going to do, just educating ourselves and each other on who we really are. And we are the majority on this planet, and it's only so much that you could do about us when we start coming together and making things happen for ourselves and cutting everybody outside of the deal. That's all I got to say.
Andre, back with your favorite series, Women Who Get Shit Done. Happy Women's History Month. And on today's docket is a white woman from the mid-19th century who actually was a good person. Today we're talking about Elizabeth Vanloo. Gonna give you the spark note. She was born to a wealthy slaveholding family in Richmond, Virginia in 1819 or around that time. When her father caught a fever and kicked the bucket in the mid-1840s, she bought the enslaved people in her household from her mother and then immediately set them free. Spent the rest of her inheritance setting enslaved black people free in Richmond, Virginia. And then when the Civil War hit, she became a spy for the Union. She allegedly snuck into Confederate war prisons and gave Union soldiers who were prisoners of war provisions, helped them communicate with their families. There was even a rumor that she helped an entire 100 soldiers from a Confederate war prison escape. And she did a lot of these deeds with one of her former enslaved black women, Mary Bowser.
Fake black history that way too many people believe, part 2. Remember this Harriet Tubman quote?
That's what you
I
call.
freed 1,000 slaves. I could have.
That's what you call a good person. You know, like there's still good people out here in the world. Like I think in like I keep saying, every group of people have these radicals in our group that are just, you know, that make everybody look bad, and every group of people have a stigma about them, you know. But it's a lot, you know, it can get a lot deeper than that. We're gonna keep going.
Freed 1,000 more if only they'd known they were slaves. Yeah, she never said that. That's fake, fakety fake. Some historians believe that it started circulating in the 1990s. Number 2, the Tuskegee syphilis study. A lot of people believe the men were injected with syphilis, but that's not what happened. They already had it, but they were denied health care. They were told they were being treated for bad blood, but instead they were given placebos. Doctors could have given them penicillin to cure them, but instead did not. The government allowed these men to suffer needlessly so they could study the long-term effects of untreated syphilis on the human body. Number 3, remember the story of Dr. Charles Drew, the black doctor that pioneered blood banks, but then got in a car accident and passed away after being denied a blood transfusion at a white hospital? That didn't happen. He did get in a car accident and he did pass away, but he was treated immediately. The rest of the story is false.
This is Anthony Acevedo, the only Mexican-American survivor of the Holocaust who was silenced about his experience for decades. During World War II, 350 American soldiers were captured and held at a Nazi concentration camp called Berga, and Anthony was one of them. During his time at Berga, Anthony documented in his journal who was killed and all the horrors that they saw and experienced. But on April 23, 1945, Anthony and the remaining soldiers were finally freed, but they were forced to sign an affidavit swearing to never talk about their experiences and threatened with imprisonment should they speak out. It wasn't until 2009 that the US government finally acknowledged the experiences of the Holocaust survivors held at Berga. The following year, Anthony registered on the US Holocaust Memorial Museum Holocaust Survivors Memorial, becoming the first Mexican American to do so. Sadly, Anthony passed away in 2018 at age 93, but his diary was published and brought closure to many families of the soldiers held at Berga who may have never known what happened to their loved one.
It's crazy, man. Like the stuff that that people go through. One thing I want to get away from is invalidating anybody else's situation. But one thing that we will do on this channel is stick to the truth and what it really is. You know, step away from slander, step away from hate, step away from all of that. Detach yourself from all of that stuff. Start looking at things from a different angle and really ingesting the bigger picture. And really understanding what we're going through and what we have to do in order to change. We're going to have to change our fundamental mindsets in which we were trained to do since the inception of school for us. We were trained to, you know, be a certain way. But we can always become something a lot better when you think for yourself and feel for yourself and do what you were created to do and not what they made you do. You know, deprogram your mind. You don't have to look at somebody if you're a racist and hate them because of the color of their skin or because you think they smell funny, they walk funny, they dress different, they act different. Step away from that. That's what we need to be at right now currently. And it's a lot of people out here in the world that's not mature enough to even get to this point. You know, like I said, stick to the facts, step away from your feelings, step away from all those things. There's nothing in there for you. But look, hopefully y'all got something good out of this. And I'll see you on the next video. And like I always say, spread love because there's too much hate in this world. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next video. And I'm out though. Bye.